Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel General Hospital today. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The air in the penthouse was still, thick with the ghosts of arguments past, and the cloying scent of expensive wilting flowers. Carly Corinthos moved through the spacious rooms with a restless energy, her usual fiery determination muted by a pervasive sense of dread. The confrontation with Nina Reeves was inevitable, a storm that had been brewing for months, but it was a secondary concern. Her primary focus was her son, Michael, who stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, his back to the room, his posture rigid with a tension that seemed to vibrate through the very air. "Michael," Carly began, her voice softer than usual, a tentative offering of peace. "We need to talk about this. You can't just shut down." Michael didn't turn. The skyline of Port Charles was spread out before him, a glittering tapestry of lives moving forward while his felt permanently stalled. "What is there to talk about, Mom? The woman who tried to destroy our family, who relished every moment of keeping me from my son, is living a consequence-free life. And the one person I trusted to help me bring her to justice has been lying to me for weeks." The one person hung between them, unspoken but omnipresent. Drew Kane. Michael's godfather, his mother's, whatever Drew was to Carly now. The alliance between Michael and Drew had been forged in shared purpose, exposing Nina's betrayal to the SEC, an act that had cost Carly the Metro Court Hotel. It was an act of vengeance that Michael had believed was righteous, a necessary scorching of the earth to protect what was left of his family. He had trusted Drew implicitly, relying on his strategic mind and his unwavering support. But that trust had shattered like glass against stone. Drew had confessed. He had walked into Michael's office at ELQ just days ago, his face a mask of grim resignation, and admitted that he had unilaterally decided to drop the case against Nina. No warning. No discussion. He had looked Michael in the eye and told him that pursuing further vengeance was a poison, that it was time to let it go. The legal justification was flimsy, a lawyer's careful phrasing about the stability of the case, but Michael had seen the truth in Drew's eyes. This wasn't about the law. This was about Carly. "He betrayed me," Michael said, the words clipped and cold. "He looked me in the eye, stood by me through every step of this, and then he pulled the rug out from under me because he decided he knew what was best. For you." He finally turned, his eyes burning with a hurt that was rapidly curdling into something darker, more dangerous. "He chose his feelings for you over his loyalty to me. Over justice for Wiley." Carly flinched, wrapping her arms around herself. "Michael, it's complicated. Drew. He thought he was doing the right thing. He saw what this obsession was doing to you, to all of us. Don't defend him." Michael's voice cracked through the penthouse, startling them both. He took a step forward, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. This wasn't his call to make. This was about Nina facing the consequences for her actions. For the first time, she was actually going to have to pay for something. And he took that away. For what? So he could play the hero and win your approval. The accusation hit its mark. Carly's relationship with Drew was a tangled, unresolved thing. A deep friendship that had veered into romance before being sideswiped by the return of Jason Morgan from the dead, or at least from his presumed grave. Drew's decision had felt, to her, like an overstep, a paternalistic gesture that ignored her own agency. But seeing Michael's raw pain, she understood the deeper wound. It was a betrayal of a sacred bond. "He wasn't trying to win my approval, Michael. I was just as angry as you are." "I still am," Carly insisted, though her conviction wavered. "But holding on to this anger, it's only hurting you." "It's the only thing keeping me going," Michael shot back. "Because if I let go of the anger, all that's left is the fact that my own godfather, a man I considered family, stabbed me in the back. And I will not let that stand." Before Carly could respond, the penthouse door opened and Willow Corinthos stepped inside. She looked pale and fragile, a stark contrast to the simmering fury of her husband. The ordeal with the SEC and Nina had taken a toll on her, but there was a new anxiety in her eyes, a frantic worry that seemed to eclipse everything else. "Michael," she said, her gaze darting from his angry face to Carly's concerned one. "I've been calling you. We need to talk." I'm a little busy right now, Willow, Michael said, his tone not softening but shifting, the anger banked for a moment by the sheer force of his love for her. It's important, Willow insisted, her voice trembling slightly. It's about Drew. Michael's expression hardened again. I don't want to hear his name right now. Michael, please, Willow pleaded, moving further into the room. It's not what you think. It's about why he really dropped the case. A cold silence descended upon the room. Carly felt a prickle of apprehension travel down her spine. What do you mean why he really dropped it? She asked slowly. He said the case was too weak, that it wouldn't hold up. Willow shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. She wrung her hands together, a nervous habit she'd had since she was a teenager fighting leukemia. That's not true. It's a lie. He dropped the case because of me. Michael stared at her, his anger momentarily displaced by confusion. Because of you? Willow, what are you talking about? You wanted Nina to pay more than anyone. I did. I do. Willow cried, a sob catching in her throat. But it's more complicated than that. Drew, he came to me. He told me he was going to drop the charges. I begged him not to. I told him Nina deserved everything that was coming to her. But he said he had no choice. Why? The word was ripped from Michael, a demand fueled by a dawning terrible suspicion. Willow looked from Michael to Carly, her face a mask of guilt and terror. She seemed to shrink before their eyes. Because he knows, she whispered, the words barely audible. Drew knows what I did. Carly took an involuntary step forward. Knows what, Willow? What did you do? The dam broke. The secret she had carried for weeks, the terrible knowledge that had been eating her alive, came pouring out in a frantic, tear-soaked confession. It was me. I'm the one who shot Drew. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the faint hum of the city below. Michael stood frozen, his brain refusing to process the words. Carly's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with disbelief. What? Michael finally managed the word, a hollow echo. The night of the storm, Willow sobbed, collapsing into a nearby armchair as if her legs could no longer support her. When Drew was shot, it was me. I thought he was someone else. I thought he was Cyrus Renault's man coming for me, for the kids. It was dark and the power was out and I was so scared. I found a gun in the desk, and when I saw a figure coming towards me in the hallway, I just fired. The story tumbled out of her, disjointed and hysterical. The paralyzing fear after the car accident with Harmony, the desperate run to the Quartermain mansion for safety, the chaos of the storm. She described the shadowy figure, the instinct to protect her children, the single fateful pull of the trigger. The horror of realizing in the flash of lightning that she had shot Drew Kane, a man who had been nothing but kind to her, a man who was family. He was wearing a dark jacket, a hood, she wept. I didn't know. I swear to God, Michael, I didn't know it was him. Michael stumbled back, bracing himself against the window frame. The world had tilted on its axis. The betrayal by Drew was one thing, a calculated, conscious decision. But this was a cataclysm. The mother of his children, the gentle, kind-hearted woman he loved more than life itself, was responsible for a violent, near-fatal act. The foundation of his reality crumbled. You, he stammered, his voice thick with shock. All this time you never said a word. You let me blame Cyrus. You let the police investigate. You stood by my side while I vowed to find who did it. I was going to confess. Willow cried. I wanted to. But then Drew woke up and he had amnesia. He didn't remember anything. And I was so terrified. I was terrified of going to prison, of losing you, of losing Wiley and Amelia. I was a coward. I let the lie stand. Carly found her voice, though it was shaky. And Drew? When his memory came back. He remembered. Willow nodded miserably. He came to see me. He told me he remembered everything. He knew it was me. And he said he would never tell anyone. He said he understood it was an accident, that I was scared. He said he wouldn't let me destroy my life, or our family, over a terrible mistake. The full, horrifying picture snapped into focus for Michael. Drew hadn't dropped the case against Nina out of some misguided affection for Carly or a sudden attack of conscience. He had dropped it to protect Willow. He was holding the truth over her head, A secret so devastating it could shatter Michael's world. In Michael's reeling mind, Drew's act of supposed mercy transformed into something monstrous. It wasn't protection, it was blackmail. A way to control them to ensure his own version of peace no matter the cost. "He's using this," Michael said, his voice low and dangerous, a new colder fury replacing the hot anger of moments before. "He's holding this over you to force our silence about Nina. To keep us all in line." "No, Michael, that's not it," Willow insisted, though her protest sounded weak even to her own ears. "He said he was doing it for us. To stop the cycle of vengeance." "He's doing it for himself," Michael roared, slamming his fist against the wall. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "He's making himself the judge and jury. He gets to decide what justice is. He gets to decide if my wife goes to jail for a crime she committed. And he gets to let the woman who tore our family apart walk away scot-free. He has all the power and we have none." He paced the room like a caged animal, his mind racing, scenarios of ruin and retaliation flashing before his eyes. His wife a criminal. His children motherless. His godfather a manipulator. The injustice of it all was a physical pain in his chest. "I have to go to the PCPD," Willow said suddenly, standing up with a shaky resolve. "I have to turn myself in. It's the only way. I can't live like this anymore, and I can't let him have this power over us." "No," Michael and Carly said in unison. Michael crossed the room in 3 strides, grabbing Willow by the shoulders. "Absolutely not. You are not confessing to anything." "But Michael, he's right," Willow argued, her eyes pleading with him to understand. "Drew has the truth. What's to stop him from using it later? What if we do something he doesn't agree with? He could destroy us with a single phone call. The only way out is for me to take control. I have to face the consequences." "The consequences would be you in prison, Willow." Michael's voice broke. "You could lose your nursing license. You could lose custody of the kids. I am not losing you. I am not letting my children lose their mother over a tragic accident that Drew is now weaponizing." Carly watched the exchange, her heart pounding. She saw the desperation in her son's eyes, the terror in Willow's. She knew Drew. She knew in her heart that his intention was likely exactly what he said, to spare Willow and the family further pain. He was a man who understood trauma, who had lived through hell himself. But Michael's interpretation was also terrifyingly plausible. In the cutthroat world of Port Charles power dynamics, a secret like this was a nuclear weapon. And Drew, whether he wanted to or not, was now in possession of the launch codes. "Michael, maybe we should talk to Drew," Carly suggested cautiously. "Calmly. Hear him out. He's not a monster." Michael whirled on her, his eyes blazing. "Isn't he? He's condoning a cover-up of a shooting. He's protecting a criminal, yes, a criminal," he said, gesturing to a horrified Willow. "And he's letting a guilty woman like Nina go free. How is that not monstrous? He's not the man I thought he was. He's a hypocrite and a manipulator." He turned back to Willow, his expression hardening into one of grim determination. "You are not going to the police. That is an order. We are going to handle this. But we are going to handle it my way." "What is your way, Michael?" Willow asked, her voice small and frightened. Michael's jaw tightened. A cold, calculating light entered his eyes, the same light that had made him a formidable force at ELQ, a legacy of his Quartermain and Corinthos bloodlines. "If Drew Kane wants to play God with our lives, then he's just declared war. And I don't lose wars." The following days in Port Charles were tense, a calm that felt like the prelude to a hurricane. At the Metro Court, Nina Reeves moved through her days with a cautious optimism. The dismissal of the SEC charges felt like a miracle, a chance to finally breathe. She knew it was Drew's doing, though he had been characteristically tight-lipped about his reasons. A part of her wanted to thank him, but the chasm between them, filled with the wreckage of Sonny's identity and the SEC investigation itself, was too vast. She found herself at Kelly's picking up a coffee when she ran into Drew. He was sitting alone in a booth, staring into a mug as if the answers to all his problems were written in the black liquid. He looked tired, weighed down by burdens she could only guess at. "Drew," she said, her tone neutral. He looked up and for a fleeting moment, She saw the ghost of the man she had known on the island, the man without the baggage of Jason Morgan's life. Nina. I heard about the case, she said, hovering by the table. I don't know what you did or why you did it, but thank you. Drew's smile was weary, devoid of warmth. Don't thank me. It wasn't done for you. The bluntness stung, but it was honest. I know. But the outcome is the same. I get to keep my job, my life here. She paused, studying him. Is everything all right? You look like you're carrying the weight of the world. He let out a short, humorless laugh. Something like that. Let's just say I made a decision that I thought would bring peace, but it might have just lit the fuse on a whole new war. Before Nina could ask what he meant, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his expression tightened. I have to go. He stood, leaving a half-finished coffee and a confused Nina in his wake. The text was from Michael. It was brief and to the point. We need to talk. My office at ELQ. Now. Drew's stomach clenched. He had been expecting this. The silence from Michael since he dropped the bomb about the SEC case had been more ominous than any outburst. He knew a reckoning was coming. He just didn't know how severe it would be. Meanwhile, at the Quartermain mansion, Willow moved through her days like an automaton. She cared for Amelia and Wiley, her smiles for them feeling brittle and false. Every time the phone rang, she jumped. Every knock at the door sent a jolt of terror through her. Michael had been distant, consumed by a cold fury that frightened her more than his hot-headed temper ever had. He was plotting, she knew. But he refused to share the details, telling her only to trust him. She tried to lose herself in the mundane tasks of motherhood, but her mind was a prison. She saw Drew's face in the moment the lightning flashed, the shock and the pain. She heard Michael's voice accusing Drew of blackmail. Was that what this was? Had her moment of blind panic handed a weapon to a man she had considered a friend? The doubt was a poison and it was spreading. Desperate for a sliver of clarity, she did the one thing Michael had forbidden. She called Drew. Willow, he answered, his voice cautious. I need to see you, she said, her voice trembling. Please. Can we meet? Somewhere quiet. There was a long pause. The park. By the fountain. 20 minutes. When she arrived, he was already there, sitting on a bench watching the water. He stood as she approached, his posture guarded. Thank you for coming, Willow said, wringing her hands. You shouldn't be here, Willow, Drew said, his tone not unkind but firm. Michael wouldn't like it. I don't care what Michael likes right now, she burst out, the pressure of the secret finally overwhelming her. I am losing my mind, Drew. I told him everything. Drew's eyes widened in genuine alarm. You what? Willow, why would you do that? Because I couldn't carry it anymore. Because he thought you betrayed him over the SEC case, and I couldn't let him believe that. I had to tell him the real reason. Her words tumbled over each other. But now he thinks you're blackmailing us. He thinks you're using this to control our family. Drew sighed, a deep, weary sound that seemed to come from the very core of his being. He ran a hand over his face. I'm not blackmailing anyone, Willow. You have to believe that. I told you I would keep your secret to protect you. To protect your family. What happened was a terrible accident. Throwing you to the wolves wouldn't bring me justice. It would just create more victims. You, Michael, those beautiful kids. But by keeping the secret, you hold all the power. Willow cried. Don't you see how that looks? Michael feels like you've made yourself the arbiter of our fate. He thinks this is a war. It doesn't have to be, Drew said, his voice intense. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. I want peace, Willow. For all of us. That's why I dropped the case against Nina. This endless cycle of revenge and retaliation. It destroys everyone it touches. I've lived it. I watched Jason live it. I will not let it destroy you and Michael. My keeping this secret isn't about power. It's about ending the cycle. Right here. Right now. Willow searched his face, and for the first time she saw not a manipulator, but a man who was genuinely tormented. He believed what he was saying. He saw himself as a firebreak, stopping a blaze from consuming everything in its path. But she also knew her husband. Michael would never see it that way. To him it was an act of aggression. He won't stop, Drew, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Michael, he's not going to let this go. He sees it as a challenge. He's going to come for you. Drew's jaw tightened. He looked out over the fountain, at the peaceful, ordinary scene that felt a million miles away from the turmoil in their lives. Then I guess I'll have to be ready. The executive offices of ELQ were steeped in old money and quiet power. Michael sat behind the massive oak desk that had once been his grandfather Edward's, his face a cold, impassive mask. He was no longer the hurt, betrayed godson. He was Michael Corinthos, CEO, a man who defended what was his. When Drew was shown in by the assistant, the air in the room turned to ice. Drew stood before the desk, refusing the offer of a seat. You wanted to talk, Drew said, his voice even. I did, Michael replied, steepling his fingers. I've had some time to think. About the SEC case. About your change of heart. It wasn't a change of heart, Michael. It was a strategic decision based on new information. Is that what we're calling it? Michael's lip curled slightly. Strategic decision. I call it an unforgivable breach of trust. I understand you're angry. You understand nothing, Michael snapped, his composure cracking for a second before he slammed it back into place. But my anger over Nina is secondary now. We have a much more pressing issue to discuss. My wife. Drew said nothing, his gaze steady. She told me about your little conversation, Michael continued, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. She told me that you remember her shooting you, and that you've generously decided to keep that information to yourself. It was an accident, Michael. She was terrified. Punishing her helps no one. That's not your decision to make. Michael rose from his chair, leaning forward on the desk, his eyes blazing. You don't get to decide what happens to my wife. You are not the judge of what is right for my family. By keeping this secret, you have placed yourself above the law. Above me. And I will not tolerate it. Drew stood his ground. What do you want me to do, Michael? Call the police? Have her arrested? Have your children watch their mother be taken away in handcuffs for a mistake she's been torturing herself over for months? Is that the justice you want? I want you to stop acting like you own us. Michael roared. I want you to admit that this isn't about protecting Willow. This is about you controlling the narrative. You dropped the case on Nina to prove a point to my mother. And you're holding this over Willow to prove a point to me. That you're in charge. Well, you're not. The two men stared at each other across the vast desk, a chasm of betrayal and hostility between them. The bond of family, of years of trust and loyalty, had been utterly obliterated. So what's your move, Michael? Drew asked quietly. What are you going to do?